Ryan couldn't be here today, but he sent me a text message last night and said, hey, can you ask Nedra about something in her book? And so I said, yeah, sure. So, Alabama, do you want to read Ryan's question, but read it in his voice, please?
I will do my best. Nedra has a chapter in her book about managing relationships with people who won't change, page 103. The following chapter is about ending relationships when others won't change, page 114. The question I have is, how do you know whether or not you need to manage a toxic relationship or end it altogether?
I love how Ryan's like citing chapter and verse of the book of Nedra when he's asking this question. Like you said in Nedra chapter 3, verse 7.
He's citing his sources.
You do talk about dysfunction in your book. It actually starts with some ruminations on dysfunction. And I think quite often that clinging to any sort of toxic relationship, now it could be toxic because I'm trying to change you, that makes a relationship toxic. Or I could have unreasonable expectations, that can make a relationship toxic. But any sort of clinging to a toxic relationship is almost a recipe for dysfunction. But can we talk a bit about that? Because I don't want people to misunderstand, because in your book, you're really clear. It's not like, well, on page 103, I show you how to change people. And then if they won't change, I show you how to leave them in the following chapter. That's not what we're getting at all, right?
In family relationships, I've learned that most people want to stay in the relationship, even if the relationship is dysfunctional. They are trying to figure out, how do I change this person? How do I change my way of thinking about it? And most often people will choose to stay. When people leave, I find that they are ready. They've gotten to a point where they have reached enough. I don't know what enough is. I've heard enough be, they called me and asked for one more thing. That's enough. They, cursed me out at this thing. That was enough. I can't, but our enough point is uniquely defined, and we have to be able to live with what comes after we end those relationships. There are questions from other people. There are changes within other family relationships. There is even a change within you because that relationship is now missing. And so people make that decision when they feel like, this relationship is at a point that I'm willing to deal with all the other stuff that comes with this. There are times when we may not have to leave a relationship for it to change. We can decrease the frequency, like you mentioned. Maybe if we talk to this person less often, we're less impacted by who they are. You don't have to talk to people as much as they want to talk to you. And that can be a savior for a dysfunctional relationship, just talking to a person less. So you figure out your level of personal care in an unhealthy relationship. But I certainly don't want to say, you know what, this is the issue, leave the relationship, because you have to live with how you decide to be in or not be in relationships.
In the chapter that Ryan mentioned, the second one there about ending relationships when others won't change, you talk about this phenomenon of personality issues, and one of them is chronic gaslighting. I was hoping we could talk about that on the podcast.
Yes, chronic gaslighting, when a person refuses to accept any level of accountability for what they do. They try to make you believe that certain things didn't happen. They try to make you believe that things are your fault. They will not own up to anything. And that can be very, very problematic in a relationship. And when that happens, we try to seek the validation from the gaslighter. No, this really happened, right? Say it really happened. And it's like, they won't validate you because they don't want to be seen as a certain type of person or a person capable of a certain behavior. And what you can do for yourself is believe yourself. Know that what happened is real. And this person who did it may not say, okay, yes, I'm guilty. That's really hard for us because we want that validation from the person who harmed us. And it's really hard for us to think of ourselves as bad people. You mentioned that we can see those parts of ourselves mostly in hindsight, not in real time of yesterday, I did this thing to you. Oh my gosh, no, I didn't. We don't want to see that part of ourselves. It takes a lot of work to get to a place where you can accept someone saying something that's not so nice about your character to you, where you can just listen and not defend your actions. Many people are not there yet. You might be. They may not be. So you can recognize gaslighting without saying, now you have to acknowledge that this was gaslighting. It's real because it happened. It's not real because they said it so.
Wow. You make me think about, I'm a big true crime fan. And whenever you watch interrogations, the more desperate the interrogator is for that confession, the more power the criminal begins to feel, the more relaxed they get, and the more they begin to play mind games where they can manipulate that person. The only way to get the confession, if you're going to get it, is to almost appear nonchalant towards it. Like, I know you did it. I know what happened. You're going to tell me or not. But whether you tell me or not, I know what happened. And so I don't need you to spell it out for me in order to know what I'm going to do about this. And there's something that maps over as well when you're dealing with that gaslighting experience. You've got to trust your understanding. You've got to trust your experience and your ability to do what's best for you, even when another person refuses to validate it. Yeah.
Did you enjoy this standalone Patreon highlight? If so, you can listen to full episodes of the Minimalists private podcast available exclusively on Patreon. Visit patreon.com/theminimalists or click the link in the description. Your support keeps our podcast and YouTube channel 100% advertisement free.